Good night.
Chuggity chug.
He's drunk as fuck.
Alright, I'm going to talk about mead just for a little bit. And mead is something different than wine. I mean, yeah, it's about the same thing. You go along, you ferment it, goes through the same process. But it's not wine. It's mead. And the big difference between mead and wine is the fact that mead has honey in it. It's made out of honey. Wine's made out of sugar. Now here's the interesting thing about wine. Is it can be made with several different fruits and several different varieties in several different ways. But the thing about it is, there's only so many sugars out there you can buy. You can buy, your brown sugar, you can buy your, store-bought sugar, whatever they got. I know there's other varieties from that you can also buy, corn syrup, whatever. But when it comes down to honey, it's a whole different thing. The thing about honey is, depending on where the bees are located at the time they collect their nectar or their pollen, is what's going to drastically change the taste of the mead. So you can imagine there's a million different types of honeys out there. There's bees down in Florida collecting orange, going along collecting orange pollen. And there's, up in Washington, there's bees up there collecting apples. And then there's wildflower bees. And then there's a lot of people out there, clove bees. There's a lot of different people out there that participate in the bee or the honey collection type thing, the beekeepers. And they do it several different ways. They put it in several different types of orchards. Some of it's wild. And then there's other interesting things about honey is, I was reading, there's 2 different places in which you can get some honey that's got a little extra to it, a little extra kick. And that's down in Mexico, where the Aztec Empire was. They go along and, if anyone's ever read the Anarchist Cookbook, anyone knows you can make LSA out of morning glory seeds. Well, anyway, these bees go along and collect the pollen from these morning glories and go along and make a hallucinogenic honey, which you can turn into wine, which is very interesting. You can't do that with sugar. It's not going to happen. Also, in Nepal, there's another set of honeybees that do it, and they're supposedly bigger than normal bees, but if you go along and get some of that honey and make it into a mead, you got your own little thing going on. I'm not recommending you do this, but it's just an interesting fact that that's something you can't get with honey. But, of course, or sugar. But, of course, I'm going to keep my honey, here in the United States. I don't want something that's going to intoxify people beyond the normal alcohol type intoxication. Them days are long gone, but it's something to think about. It's just a whole different thing when you do a mead wine. And on top of it, mead was one of the first brews ever created. I could see how it happened. You mix honey with water, and bam, you've got mead. It's that simple. There's nothing to it. There's no, adding hops or doing this or a bunch of other crazy stuff. It's just them 2 ingredients, and they start to ferment on their own, more or less. So, now that I've went ahead and put a little bit of history on it. Alright everyone, today we're going to do something a little different. Well, I'm going to do something a little different. Today I'm going to make some mead, which I'm going to go ahead and do a real simple batch. But I've got all my mead here soaking. Some clove honey. And I'm going to go ahead and make a 6-gallon batch, which is going to require 15.5 pounds of honey. I've got my primary fermenter cleaned out, all my tools sanitized. Sanitized my hands more than once, but I'll go ahead and give it another squirt just to be safe. Make sure I take a sip of this wine here. Give me that energy Popeye gets. Now I'm going to go ahead and get started. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is put all this honey, which I had boiling a little bit. It's not hot to the point that I can stick my hand in here, but it was. But the honey, you can see it. Let me see if I can find that half bottle. It's a half bottle somewhere. There we go. Over the side. There it is. But you see how it's moving like molasses in there? That's what you want. Or not like molasses, but moving like warm syrup. That's what you want. That's what you want going on here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put these 15.5 pounds in this bucket, and I will get back with you. clear the honey out of it. Good to go. Alright, on to the next. The next trick, or the next thing to do, is to add water. Now here's the catch. What I'm going to do is put about 2.5 gallons of water in there. And I'm going to go along and mix it up. Then I'm going to take a hydrometer reading. Then little by little, I'm going to keep adding water until my hydrometer reading goes to 1.115. That's where I want it to be. That's what I'm going to go for. So I'm just going to keep adding water until I hit that. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now. Now, a lot of people, there's a lot of discussions out there whether or not, what you should do, whether you should, use cold water, whether you should use warm water. People argue different points that you use hot water, you boil out some of the taste and stuff of the mead. If you use, cold water, this, that, or the other. But you know what? It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and use cold water because that's what I prefer. It may be easier to mix with warm water, but I got a drill and a wine whip, so it's not that difficult to stir. So I'm going to go ahead and knock that out now. Get about a couple of gallons here. Let me see what my marker is. Get it up to about almost 5, I guess. Okay, that'll work. Now what I'm going to do now, is go ahead and take the wine whip and mix this up and take a hydrometer reading. And I'm going to keep adding water until I reach that magical point. So that's what I'm going to do now. Take the star stain. Alright, so pretty much I mixed this all up and I got it to where I need to be. It's 1.112 to 114. It's right in the middle of the two marks, so I'm not going to tweak it much more. I'm probably a little over, 5.5 gallons is about where I'm at, so I'm pretty content with that. That'll do alright. It smells good, so that's important. I guess everything's good to go. Get some more of my energy here. Alright, that's pretty much it. Okay, what I'm going to do now is go ahead and clean everything up and then get everything ready for tomorrow, because that's when I'm going to go ahead and pitch the yeast, let the Camden tablets sit for 24 hours, and all that good stuff. So tomorrow I'll get into how to mix up the nutrients and the energizers and all that good stuff, because there's a trick to it. Wine, you just add it right at the beginning, you're good to go, everything's pretty much where it needs to be. Mead is a little different. You have to mix it at least twice a day to 3 times a day. In a perfect world, 3 times a day, every 8 hours, you'd be on the dot and your little beeper would ring and you'd be in here mixing this up or whatever, whoever's doing it. But 1/4 teaspoon of nutrients and 1/2 teaspoon of energizer the first day, the 3rd day, the 5th day, and the 7th day. So that's 4 times you've got to add it. Which I'm going to probably do that in my afternoon sessions. I'll add that stuff. I'll stick it in there, stir it up, go ahead and handle business then. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get everything together. I've got my Lavin K1 V1116, and this is good yeast. I mean, you can't mess anything up with this. It will ferment through anything, it seems like. I've never had a problem with it. I mean, it's a trooper. You put it in there and it's just bubbling. Never had a problem. So I'll put that here. Camden tablets. So I got that in here. I got this here. These nutrients. This. I can put the Camden tablets away, but there's my little thermometer to tell me what the temperature of the water is. It tells me what the temperature of this is, 72 degrees. I'm good to go. I'll notate that. Useful tool to have. I mean, I don't like dipping things in. That's one less thing you got to clean with this thing. This band. Yeah. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and clean everything up and get ready for tomorrow. I'll see you then when I go ahead and pitch the yeast. Alright guys, it's the next day. It's been the 24-hour mark. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and it's been sitting for a little over 24 hours, 26 hours, whereabouts. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is mix it up again and take another hydrometer reading just to be sure that everything is safe. All my tools here have been sanitized with Star San, so they're good to go. And I'm going to go ahead and mix it up and get a hydrometer reading and get back with you. Alright, so here we are. We're going to go along and do the next thing, and that's pitch the yeast. I've got Lavin K1V1116, which this is some good yeast. If you mess this up with this, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this yeast right here is a straight trooper. It's like the black water of yeast, unless you're using like turbo yeast or something, but this will do the job regardless of the situation. So, go ahead and rip it off here. So I got sanitized hands, I sprayed the bottle. And I'm going to go ahead and add it into this water that's 102 degrees. I figured 102 ain't far off from 104. It'll work. I'm going to let it do its thing. Poured a little bit of this honey water in here, so it has something to eat on for a minute or two before we get started. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and put this back. What it is, it's where it needs to be. It's 0.1 or 1.112, where I want it to be. Alright, it's been about 17 minutes, I'd say. That was a little over. But you can tell the yeast is starting to ferment. You can see it on the top, bubbling, kind of foaming up on top, so it's where you want it to be. I can see little bubbles starting to formulate, so I'm going to go ahead and pitch my yeast now. Quarter teaspoon of nutrients and a half a teaspoon of nutrients, so, or energizer. So my nutrients, which I got right here in this bag, yeast nutrients. I'm going to go ahead and get my quarter cup out, fill her up, sprinkle her in there. I'm going to get my nutrients, which go figure, I'd have a big bag of nutrients but have a little bag of energizer. So this is the nutrients I just put in there. Now I'm going to go along and put the energizer in there, which I'm going to need a half. So let me go ahead and move up a little bit. Here's my half. Ooh, not that much. I can work with that. Alright, there we go. That's half. Now keep this in mind. I'm going to do this a total of 4 days. Today is day 1. Day 3 of the fermentation process, I'm going to add it again. Day 5 of the fermentation process, I'm going to add it again. And day 7, I'm going to add it again. And that's why it's in its primary fermentation stage. So what I'm going to do is just keep adding it. Like I said, every 2 days I'll keep adding it, starting from day 1 all the way up to day 7. Now during this time that I'm doing this, I'm also going to mix this up. I'm going to go along and stir it up and get it real good and mixed up and everything. So that way, you know, it's all in there and it's all doing what it's supposed to do. But throughout this day, throughout this time, it's going to go along and keep giving itself nutrients and energizers. So it's going to keep fermenting till it goes ahead and gets racked in its secondary fermenter, which the carboy. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to stir it up and get it in that direction.